We're going to talk about growing pains is the biggest one we're going to talk about tonight. So please grab a piece of paper and a pen. Trez Robinson, she's from Stage to Sell in the Hampton Roads, Virginia area. She has been in business since 2006 and currently stages about 300 properties a year, 100 of them being investor properties. She does her processes just a tad differently, even working with investors. One of the talking points that we talked about in our interview, so make sure that you sign up for and subscribe to the aspiredhomemagazine.com. Make sure you have subscribed, because when it comes out, you're going to not want to miss this video. Okay, this interview was talking about how to work with investors, how to get started, you know, what is the process that she does differently, why does she get paid at closing with investors over top of, in front of regular staging jobs, where staging jobs people normally get paid ahead of time. She explains how that works and why she did it, and how it has been very successful for her. Okay, tonight we're going to talk about growing pains. I'm going to start out with Trez, if you want to say hello, maybe tell everyone just a little bit about yourself if you want, if I haven't already touched on a bunch of stuff, but you go ahead.
Thank you. Well, good evening, everyone. Thank you. I really appreciate Angela for inviting me. I don't know if I'm worthy to be here, but I'll do my best. I've been staging for about 12 years in this area. Started my business after I retired from the military, and just was looking for my passion. And I was very fortunate to have a sister that was a home stager in California. So I tapped into her resources. She'd been staging for about a year and a half when I was getting ready to launch into a business, and she was my mentor. So it was phenomenal to have her as my mentor, and she's always been my mentor. She has a phenomenal business in Northern California, home staging. So that's how I really got started. I watched what she was doing and went out there and tried it and just found my passion. So that's really just how I got started in the business, and the rest is history. Here we are 12 years later.
Thank you so much for joining us. We're looking forward to tapping into it. Bobby's here with us. Everybody knows Bobby. Say hello.
Hi,
Bobby,
guys. Good to see you. Hello, hello.
Bobby's from Raleigh, North Carolina, and we also have Tori here from New York. So I'm going to let them help me ask questions today. Can you tell us what your biggest challenges were when you first started your business? If you can remember back that far, like 12 years is a long time.
Well, I think I can. Well, I think probably like everyone starting any kind of business is, where am I going to get my business from? Who are my clients going to be? And, how am I going to start this business, and how am I going to make money doing this? So I think thinking through that, I took a path just because staging, 12 years ago was pretty new. And in this area, there were no other real stagers doing staging. So I opted to look at more of the education side of staging and to immerse myself with realtors and realtor organizations and educating the realtors, because it wasn't a household term, staging, back then, right? So people didn't really know for the most part what home staging was. So I got really involved in all the local realtor associations and just kind of started putting myself out there, joined that, became part of the different, on different boards. And then every time I'd have an opportunity to do a presentation or to, basically go in and make a presentation for the realtors, I would do that. I got quickly certified in the state of Virginia to teach about home staging. So that was really cool, because then the realtors could come and listen to my home staging class, so to speak, and they would actually get CE credit towards their real estate license that they have to continually renew each year. So I just felt like I needed to be in that education mode, and I need to educate the realtors on the value. And if they understood the value and could buy into that, they would then much more easily help sell it to their clients. So I really needed them on board. So that's was probably my biggest challenge. I mean, it was a challenge, but it was a really great way to start. And I learned a lot, and it really kind of helped propel me forward to that next level of getting business.
If you were to do it again, would you tackle it the same way? Do you think, because I always tell my clients that education and being an expert is key when you're first getting started, growing in, and Bobby calls it, what do you call it, Bobby? Your street cred, right?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Of course, we all need our street cred. Once you earn your street cred, they'll follow you anywhere. It's really wonderful. So yes, I love to hear the stories about how people get their street cred, because we all kind of go different ways. So
yeah. How did you get your street cred, Bobby, when you first got started? What was you told us this a couple of weeks ago, I think. But.
Oh, well, my street cred, let's see, when I first started, first of all, I mean, it was just kind of my background. I had been involved in fashion. I've been involved with production. I've been involved with negotiations. I've been involved in auctioneering. I mean, a lot of my stuff was presentation, communication, and getting people to action. So I took some of that, and then I started paying attention to what was working and what wasn't working. And then I thought, you know, I got to do something more, because I just woke up one day and poof, I was a stager. So I decided to go and get accredited. And at the time, which was 14 years ago, there was really only one place I knew of to go to when I did my research. So I got my accreditation and moved forward from then. But from that point on, I just started, you know, doing anything and everything I could, reading, and my background was varied. And part of what I loved about film school was actually like Alfred Hitchcock and how he would frame out the pictures and things. And that always stuck in my head. So I started applying that, you know, options like that, and also the negotiations that I did for this insurance company, which was great. I mean, I would argue and they would pay me, which is great. I would take some of that and I would utilize that in figuring out, I didn't want to manipulate people, that's not it, but I wanted them to realize the value. So I was able to take some of that and bring it to the street, so to speak, in order to get that. And then now, as part of my technique, is when I go in, I ask them, tell me your story, and I get them to feel very, very comfortable with me. And then I give kind of generic, more safe touches as I'm up front, explaining to them why I'm doing what I'm doing. And then as I get deeper into the house and start getting into what I call the personal rooms, then by then I've started to earn my street cred with them. So there's earning your street cred with the realtors and the people out, you know, out in the world. And then there's earning that street cred when you walk through the door for your staging. So that's kind of how I work that.
I like to look at the different problems that people have and the different challenges they have to be able to give them to go with direction, right? So when Trez is talking about the challenges, the biggest challenge she had when she first started, she's talking about when she was, you know, attracting clients. You know, some of the challenges that we have, it's not so much we can attract the clients and we finally get that client, and then it's getting them to pay, and it's getting them to go through the process and believe in you through the process. And that's what Bobby's kind of talking about here. So that actually works out really well. So when you're first getting started, it's, you know, building trust and building relationships, and it hasn't changed. 12 years later, you're still have to, like, you know, if you were starting your company right now, or even if you were expanding or wanting to grow, it's the relationships that you build and the network and building your street cred and being an expert. And so, I mean, that's what has been a big focus on my business this year for myself, has been, you know, creating how can I take it to the next level with not only just myself, but with my marketing clients. How can I take them to the next level? Like, yes, they've got a handful of clients. Yes, they've got business. Yes, they are doing well, but how can we build more street cred, and how can we, you know, build a bigger network, etc. And so I love that we topped onto this topic for sure. So now, what is your biggest challenge, Trez? Like, if you would say in the last year or so, what would, you know, fast forward 12 years, you've now, I would say you're an expert after 12 years, but what would you say was your biggest challenge now?
I would probably say now I'm at the point where about a year ago I decided I really wanted to expand my business. So I think in doing that brings on a whole other set of challenges, and how we're going to scale the business. You know, what makes sense, what, you know, bottom line, cash flow have always been fortunate. I had a lot of really good training in the military. So as far as from a perspective of the business side, I've always had a really good business sense. So I've always been really aware of that and making sure that the business was always profitable. And we scaled, you know, like most people are starting this business, you start small steps and then you build from that, and hopefully you know, build in that right direction and make those good decisions that continue to propel you forward. So with that, of course, comes staff, right? And all the other things that come with growing. And I think probably, I mean, I talk to small business owners all the time, and I think everybody pretty much could agree across the board that's probably one of the biggest challenges is hiring people, and hiring obviously good people, hiring people that, you know, that are trainable and you can trust and you can turn things over to, and, you know, those types of things. So that's been a big challenge for me. I had fortunate for years, I had my boys worked for me since they were 14. So I really wanted to also instill a good work ethic with them, since, you know, their mom owned a business and I wanted them to work in the company and do that. So they did that. And I was very fortunate. Of course, you know, you realize how fortunate you were after they're gone, even more so, because you think, oh, so many problems, you have family working for you and stuff, and there's issues, but really, you know, the trust and those things, it's hard, you just can't even pay for those things. But now having them gone and having to go out and seek employees off the streets has been hugely challenging for me. And I've gone through so many people in the last year, but I'm here to say, knock on wood, that I think we have a pretty good team, and we're really moving in the right direction. So it's just taken a good year, I'd say, to weed through a lot of that, and it's painful. It's really painful to get people on and train them, and then have to let them go and find new people, and you know, it's just it can be difficult. But I don't know if there's any really great way to say how to do that. I've done the thing. So I just think sometimes you just got to keep trying until the right folks come along, and you just have to know when it's time to say it's time for you to go, and not let that go on too long.
So what are some of the red flags? Oh, sorry, Bobby, it was paused a little bit. What are some of the red flags? Like you said that you've had staff in the past, and and I know that you went over a huge, big turnover just recently, so where you basically had to let a lot of your moving staff go and then refresh. And plus, you were expanding at the same time, so you were also bringing an operations manager, that kind of thing, in place. Right. What were the red flags that you had to know that it was time to go? Because I don't know about you, but I fall in love with people, and I always see the good in people, and sometimes they're not like a good fit, you know, but I will keep them on longer than I should, you know? Right.
Yeah, and I think in a couple cases I probably did. On a couple, the last two that I had, you know, I look for veterans because I'm a veteran, and I really believe in, you know, I'm very much a supporter of hiring local and hiring veterans. So I went that route, and I hired two guys who just came out of the Navy, and they were young and they were motivated. But I think, you know, the red flags, I think it's just your gut. I mean, there were just signs looking back from the very beginning. There were small things, but you know, when you have those small things, you kind of overlook them when someone's new because they're learning and you're training them, and you're like, okay, well, they forgot that, and they did that, and they dropped that, and they didn't strap the yard in, so that broke. And, you know, I say small things, but over time, you just kind of have to look at it all and say, there's just too many things, you know, and so I don't know if there's one particular red flag, but I would just say I'm pretty good with my gut. And usually within the first couple days, if I even have an inkling of this is probably going to work, it's probably not going to work. I might let it go on for a month and try, but it's probably not going to work. So I think your gut, sometimes, you know, you have to trust that and go with that.
So Tori, do you have any tips on, any chance that you have any tips? Because I don't know, did you have staff? You had contract staff, which is the difference. So Trez has employee staff. Tori has had contract staff. And there's a difference in the fact that you're tapping into different pools, and the staff needs, and this is one of the things that is really hard for a homeowner or for an employee is to know which pool to tap into and what you get back from it, right? So with contracts, when you're contracting out and you're just, hiring them part-time, the challenges that you have is they end up looking elsewhere for work sometimes, things like that. Did you have any experiences, any challenges with your contracts workers, Tori?
Yeah, I mean, when I was doing staging in real life in my staging company, I didn't have people on full time because I didn't necessarily have consistency all the time, or I didn't feel like I needed them. So it's funny because whenever you do actually need them, they're usually never around. Now, now I have like a webmaster who is on contract, as well as a VA who is ideally on full time, even if I don't have work for her. I mean, I'm paying her pennies a day basically. So I'm able to eat up that cost. But it's still hard because you have to rely on the communication and making sure that you are verbally telling them what they need to do, kind of make sure that they feel important too, in order to keep them on board, and trying to really just give them projects that they can conquer in a short amount of time, so you're also saving money.
Yeah, there's a really fine balance that goes on, right? So there's the balance of your needs and their needs, and making sure that, as you keep the respect and you keep them on focus of what your company's needs are, while you still honor them and their personal needs, right? So I think that's one of the toughest things, and that's why there's really no cookie cutter way to hire the right staff for any one person, and that's why it's hit and miss sometimes. And when you find that good person, you need to really hold on tight, pay attention to what their needs are, pay them good, think about how long it took you to get them, and make sure that you're paying them well, so that when the time comes, they don't really want to go elsewhere, especially if they usually if you're meeting their needs, they're not looking anywhere else, and keeping them happy, that kind of thing. And even if their goals are different than your company's goals, let's say, for example, their goals are to eventually leave you to go do something else, as long as you're honoring them the whole time that you're with them, and the whole your communication is there, that you are building their skill sets to get to that position, and then and building for the next person, and bringing the next person through the ranks while they're still there to train them the way that you need them to be trained. So I think that because people aren't going to be with you always, and I think that one of the things we do as employees, one of the mistakes we make, is that we think that because they're with us now, they owe us and they should stay with you forever. Do you know what I mean? And I think that if we're going to have good employees, we need to really look at that too. Look at their end goals. It doesn't mean that they can't help you now. It doesn't mean that they can't be golden for you now. And they can even help train the next person as they come through. So,
well, yeah, I think it's also, when you have contract employees too, it's also important to have those systems and processes in place, and have them be updating the system and process that they're actually doing for you. This way, if they leave tomorrow, where they left off, what needs to go on to the project next. So since it is kind of a temporary position necessarily, they could pack up and leave tomorrow, and then you wouldn't know what to do. So back to that communication and having a system and process in place, so you stay on top of them and know exactly what's going on.
Gotcha.
And don't be afraid to give them the freedom to build their own systems, because a lot of the times they come with knowledge, and they can bring a lot to the system that we already have. It's one thing that we can take someone and train them so that they can be like us, but let's face it, if I'm trying to put somebody into my shoes and to be like me, there's a good chance they won't be happy, because they don't have the same goals, they don't have the same motivation, they don't have the same passion, that kind of thing. So we need to realize, we need to tap on and find out what their goals are, what their passions are, what they love to do, what they don't like to do, what can we use to motivate what they don't like to do. And I think that in our interviews, the interviews are the key right there. So if you haven't, when you interview, if you're just looking at the resume and you don't tap into their personal side and the things that are important to them, and then use that to mold and figure out if they're going to be a good fit or not. And one of the things I say before you ever get them to come, you start interviewing, get them to come in for interviews, is that you write down all the things that you're looking for in an employee, right? Or like all the things that are important to you, and make sure they match.
You know what I used to do when I was doing, especially the vacant end, and I would need team members. People, I would have a list of people who had contacted me, et cetera. And so this is what I would do is I would say to them, okay, before I even ever talk to you about working with me, you need to come help with 2 vacants and go to 1 consult with me. And because they don't know what they're getting into, they have this HGTV idea of what's going to happen. And what happened was time and time again, when I didn't have that in place, they would get in there and I would train them like 2 or 3 times. And then they would go, oh, this is so much harder than I ever thought. Or I found out that they weren't trainable. They would fight me on everything. Right. Or they would say, yes, yes, yes. When you walk out of the room, you come back in and they've done something totally different. I mean, people will show you who they are. I love that saying because it's so true. So that's what I did is, if they went through the first time, and what I would do is I would say to them, I'm not going to give you any guidance today. I want you to watch what's going on and jump in where you think you could be helpful. And then my other crew members knew how that worked. And so they would watch and they'd say, oh, why don't you help me with this or whatever. And we'd see how they would already fit within the dynamic of the team members I had, because the team members that I had loved them. I knew that they worked well together. So to bring somebody into the mix, it was very important to me because, again, I was a small firm. I really, really depended on my folks. Whoever came in needed to be an asset and not a drain. So it was, I cannot tell you how many times they wouldn't show up for the second consultation. And I've just saved my time and effort to give them knowledge. And then if they had done that, I went through the consultation process, and then I would find out, is this someone who could do consultations in my business, which is great because with all the ones I'm doing, I need someone who's good at that. Or, are they a great team member where it's great if I spend the time to really train them and explain to them, then what an incredible asset. And I was really, really blessed. There was one woman in particular that I'm thinking of. She joined the crew, and it was like immediately I knew there's my leader. I'm going to be, and it was funny because they all want to be the leader, or they think they do. They think they do. But it's who do the other team members naturally follow? Who do they naturally gravitate towards? Those are the people that I would like sit back and watch, and I would see how they handled that. Was it a natural thing for them or not? When it was natural to them, they were the ones that I then would take aside and teach more about the management too. Like when you see a conflict happening between 2 team members or things. So it was really, to me, because the interview process, I got to tell you, I'm a great interview. Whatever you think you need, I can be that. Okay. And a lot of people are that way. They're great at the interview, but then when you put them out into the warehouse, where's the person that I interviewed, right?
Right.
So Therese, there was a question I had too. Through your process, have you found team members that you have wanted to like switch over to management or team leaders, or do you have a process for that?
Not really at this point. We're not that big. I just have I have my lead stagers, and each one of them is just in charge of their own job, and then they just work with my movers and my guys that are full-time on staff that do all the moving and the driving of the trucks and all that. But we've also trained them a lot. So they're kind of end up being the helpers, because that's how I can employ them full-time. So all my guys know how to hang art. They all know how to, if I need to touch up furniture, if I need them to fix legs on whatever it is, aside from actually doing the staging. But I really expect them to get in there and get that furniture kind of in the general location. So when the stagers there comes in, we're not moving. You know, I have a thing called Ohio rule, only handle it once. So we try to, you know, it's not a perfect science, but at least try to get in that general area and that, you know, get the rooms. I always tell them I can hire someone, you know, to dump furniture in a room. That's not what I'm looking for. You know, I want these guys to think through the process of where things are going to go, because sometimes the stager's not always there when they get there and delivering that furniture. Mm-hmm. So they're kind of almost like assistant stagers. Maybe not quite that, but they definitely help the stagers do a lot of that work, you know, before they leave the scene. So that's how we work too. I mean, working as a team, because we're small. I mean, we do a lot. You know, but we're a small team, and for them to be able to work together and get along is absolutely imperative. And the other ones that I had, and that's really one of the reasons why I let a lot of those folks go, because they just could not work with the other folks. You know, they could, you know, I've had a couple stagers that have been with me a long time, and if someone comes in and they're already torquing off my stagers that have been with me for 10 years, that's a problem. So if they couldn't merge into that team and they couldn't earn their respect and do that, then it just didn't work for me. Mm-hmm. So that was huge, like you just said, about working together as a team. And, you know, and I was telling them, nobody's a boss. We all just were here to get the job done and work together. So.
Interesting. There was a question that came up. Orlando had a couple questions. I think we touched on one. He was asking if you've ever considered a 1099 rather than having employees have contract folks.
I do. My stagers are 1099. They're independent contractors. They pretty much run their own schedule for the most part. They've been doing it long enough. The realtors know them. They actually, half the time, I don't know. Well, now we have a really good calendar system, so I can look and see when they're doing consults and when they're out doing stuff. But for the most part, they do their own scheduling, and they just put it in the master calendar. So they're definitely 1099. That works great, because, you know, then they just work when they need to, or when they've got consults scheduled, or if I've got vacants, I'll just plug them in. If they let me know, I'm super flexible. If they're like, hey, I'm going to be out Thursday and Friday this week, then I won't put them in for a vacant staging, but I'll put someone else in there. So not for, I couldn't do 1099s for the guys that move the furniture. That they would not fall within that. I mean, I know every state's different, but they would not fall in that. They would meet the criteria. I'd be in a lot of trouble. They're really employees. You know, I direct them every day what time they come and where they're going to go and times they show up. So that doesn't meet the criteria for being a 1099. They're employees.
And that's very important, guys. Like if you do not meet the 1099 criteria, you could get in a lot of trouble if it's found out that, and what usually happens is when it usually pops up is when there becomes a conflict with you and your contractor, your 1099, then they go back to the government and say, hey, but I really wasn't. She controlled my time that I was here. I used her equipment. I used, you know, like all the things that fall into really being an employee. If they use your equipment, if you dictate when they come and when they go, if what are some of the other things? I mean, those are the main things. Those are the main ones, right? So if they can say yes to any of all of those, yes, you know, then there's a good chance that the government will then come for you. They'll get unemployment insurance. I don't know what you guys call it in the U.S., but they get an extra benefit when they go, even if you let them go. And that's usually what happens is it usually becomes a confrontation when you're letting them go. Then they're going to the government saying, I need money. And this person is not doing their business right. And that's usually when you have a problem. So you need to make sure that if they're using your equipment, they're using, you're just dictating when they come and go. And what was the other one? Come and go.
You're scheduling them or telling them, come and go.
Yeah, that's it. So any of those, then you need to make sure that you're getting them on as an employee as quickly as you can.
Orlando was saying that he uses an independent contractor agreement. So he was talking about that, but he was also asking about Trez, how do you handle confidential ideas, proprietary info? How do you handle that with your 1099 people? I mean, do you use that independent contractor agreement? What do you do?
The attorney that draft a contract for each of my stagers, and and they just sign the contract. And I mean, I've been kind of fortunate because I've known them for so long and they've been with me. So there's a huge, I mean, one of my stages has been with me 10 years, you know, so really the only, you know, issues, the main issues I've had is when I'm hiring like my workforce to move my furniture and those types of things. I've never really run into a lot of issues with my stagers, and I'm sure a lot has to do with it. Most of them are, you know, in my age range, and they're, you know, it's just that you're talking about a whole, you're hiring younger guys that, you know, are working for less money and a different generation. I mean, there's just so many different factors in that, but it's just never been an issue, I guess, with my stagers, with my independent contractors. Never had any issues with it. I don't know if I answered that question or not. Sorry.
That's okay. I've had a lot of clients that have had, you know, challenges, or they have trust issues with, you know, and they're afraid to bring people on because they might learn their systems and move on to the next, you know, that kind of thing. And I've even had a client who's been in business 10, 15 years and had that happen, you know, where a couple of their stagers, trailer stagers, actually joined together and started a business on their own. And to be honest, that will happen. It could happen. And it doesn't matter what confidential agreement you put in place. You can only stop them for so long. There's a time period.
Yeah, there's a time period. There's like a no compete thing that we have and all that, but then that's a time period too. So, I mean, I had one stager that worked with me. She did that, and I kind of knew on the side she was starting to buy furniture, and I just confronted her. I just was honest and said, "Look, if you want to start staging or do this, it's probably in our best interest that you just, you know, go on and do your own thing." And she did, and it was no hard feelings. And you know, the bottom line is for me, it's like if someone's going to do that, that doesn't really bother me, honestly, because I have my company and I know what we've built, and for someone else to start, they, you know, I'm not trying to put me down that's just starting, but, you know, I've done this for 12 years. So they're going to have to work to get where we've gotten in 12 years. And that wouldn't really bother me. They're not going to be able to imitate what I do. It's, you know, when you have a company, as you guys know, your name is it's you and who you are, and the skill sets and the things that you do, and the talents and skills that you bring, and how you can build a team. And I think that's one of the skills that I, you know, was fortunate when I came from the military, because, you know, building a team and doing those things, I felt like that was one of my skill sets, and I knew I could do that within this company. So, you know, I think that people are going to do that, like Angela said, and they're going to branch off, but I just wish them good luck, and, you know, just keep doing what we're doing. So,
and it doesn't always have to be bad. It doesn't always have to be bad. It just, it hurts. It can hurt, and it can, you know, because you've taught them stuff and you've trusted them and you've given them information, and you can't help but wonder, you know, they wouldn't have been able to do what they're about to do without all the knowledge that you gave them. But if you flip it on the other side, you should be proud that you are now growing the economy. You've now introduced another person into the economy that is going to give back, is going to, you know, learn. And you're right, it's going to be a lot harder, even if you've given them, they're not walking away with your processes, like key turnover, and you're giving them the money to run it. They don't know all the ins and outs, and they don't know the big picture that's up here. And the other thing is that you are the one that runs your ship, and you're the captain of your ship. So you have know what it takes to move forward, and what, you know, you're always the one with the ideas. They can't take your new ideas with them. They don't know that big picture. So sometimes I tell my clients that all the time, is you will always be the leader. They will always be the follower, if that's the kind of, if they're going to take your ideas and move forward with them. And that's even if it's a competitor that, or you feel as a competitor out there that's not in your business, and you feel like they're always following you, or they're copying the same things that you're doing. They don't know what the whole mix is. They don't know the big picture. They don't know that you might be doing a lost leader over here in order to make money over here, and that you have the resources, one resource over here paying this resource over here. So for example, the magazine that we're doing is, you know, is a resource that is paying for other things, and it's a combination of all the things we're doing as a group. You know, so as the, you know, the 30 people that are working in the magazine and working on the magazine, that's something that somebody else can't just all of a sudden recreate quickly, because they don't know the resources that have gone into place and the hidden things that are paying for different portions, or the systems and stuff. They might know portions, they might be able to do certain pieces of it, but they don't know all of it. And that's the same with your business when you have an employee. They don't know it all. They'll only know the part that they ran. And a lot of the times they will look at, and one of the hardest things I used to have, because I had graphic designers, and I used to charge a freelancing fees to my clients, which would be anywhere from, depending if it was maintenance or if it was new projects or what kind of creativity was involved, it'd be anywhere from $45 to $125 an hour. And then I would pay my graphic designers anywhere, depending on their experience and when they came in and what they were doing, anywhere from $14 an hour to $25 an hour. And they couldn't understand, like, if I got a job for $125, why they were only getting $25. What they didn't realize is all the other expenses on all the unbillable hours, all the things that have to go in place. So if they walk away from your company thinking they're going to go and make that $125 themselves,
right,
they're going to be sadly disappointed very quickly that believe it or not, they might only be making $15 an hour by the time they're all said and done, and once they pay their staff, and once they realize, and they didn't know all the ins and outs, they didn't know what the resources were that were helping offset the cost or where the profit margins lay and stuff like that, because they don't know all the pictures. They only know the parts that they were working on. They knew the graphic design part. They didn't know how I got clients. They didn't know how I tapped in. I had one graphic designer leave, and she ended up quickly having to work for somebody else in the next 6 months, even though she started her own business, because she didn't know how to attract clients. You know, she knew how to do the graphic design part because that's what I got her doing, and she was really good at it, and we were able to spin things off quickly. But she didn't know how to attract the clients. And then she, you know, even if she was charging $125 an hour, it took her so long to get the next client that she was only making $5 an hour when it was all said and done. So she would have been better off to work with me as a partnership and keep going. So these are things that we need to educate I think we need to educate our employees a little bit, know that we're not really making, you know, the rest of the money, that there's expenses, and we also need to not cushion them from the hardships. They need to know that it's hard running your business, and there's stuff that goes on, and they wouldn't want to do it. They like to come in and do what they do every day and go home at the end of the day and turn it off. We don't get to do that as employers. We're still thinking about, where's their paycheck coming from? Can I hire new people? Can I expand? What are all the other growing pains we have? So speaking of more growing pains, expansion. So some of the questions that I get sometimes with expansions is, when do you know when to expand? You know, I get that from my clients all the time. When do you know when? Like, when is it that you should be buying more inventory, that you should, because I find one of the mistakes that a lot of stagers make is that they go out and expand too quickly. So then their bottom line gets eaten up in expansion costs, whether it be, you know, opening up a warehouse too quickly, hiring staff too quickly, getting too much furniture, you know, too quickly before that you have enough houses to really even put them in. When, you know, do you have any tips on that, Trez? Because you've done this very well. You've expanded quickly and well in the different periods of your business. Is there any tips to knowing when?
That's a really hard question. I don't know if I have the perfect answer for that. I guess I could just talk to how I did it. I think I did it fairly gradually. I mean, I think it was kind of like most people start, and I've heard, you know, several of these type interviews with stagers, is kind of one house at a time sometimes, you know, and supplementing with other things like doing consults and building the business and building the cash flow in other areas. So then you have the money to make the investment. And again, you know, that's a whole other discussion about, do you invest in the inventory? Do you rent the inventory? Do you have the warehouse? I mean, it's all about that. And there was just decisions I just made early on because I just saw an opportunity. No one else was doing it. I wanted that to be my niche market. I wanted to corner the market on vacant property. I ran the numbers, and it just made sense to me that it was more cost effective for me to own the truck than to rent the truck, and the hassles that went along with that. So, or whatever the scenario was. So I think it's, you know, a lot of it is you really have to be a really good business person. I mean, like I think you were saying just before, you know, there's lots of really, really good stagers. Doesn't mean you can run a business. You know, I mean, you're right. It's a completely different animal. So Yeah. So when to grow? I mean, I'm getting ready next month to take on another whole part of my warehouse in June and expand again, because we're making that decision because what I have right now, we're getting too full. We're getting, overcrowded, and then I'm starting to add jobs. So I know with all the inventory that I have out and what's back, I can just kind of balance that and know that we're going to expand. And of course, I'm doing a major, as you know, Angela, working with you and coaching, a huge marketing thing that I'm doing. So I know once we launch that, because haven't never done it before, my thought is I know we're going to do it well, and we're really going to get out there and blanket the market out there in our area. That I think that's definitely going to help us even grow more. So I don't know. It's not a really good answer. Sorry.
That does bring us into the coaching, right? So one of the challenges, and you are very, you are experienced. You've been doing this for 12 years. Most people would say, why do you need a marketing coach, or why do you need a coach? And I think some people might be shocked to know that you actually have a couple coaches, right? Like you have a few coaches out there. And so what I wanted to ask you is, how do you choose your coach? Because that was a question that somebody asked. How do you choose? How do you know how much money you should be spending on a coach? And what was it that you looked for, and why, and how did it work for you? That's a lot of questions all at once, but I'll let you just kind of flow with it. What was the reason you started why did you decide to have a coach in the first place? This kind of thing.
I'll take it way back 12 years, because I got a coach 12 years ago before I ever started. And I guess it's my personality. I like to know the direction I'm going, and it's probably, I just call it my military brain. I like to have a plan. I'm very systematic, and I didn't want to start a business and not know and try several different things. When I went out there and to start a business, I wanted to make sure it was the right business for me, and I didn't want to have to redo it. I wanted to do it one time and do it right out the gate. So I hired a life coach to coach me in my last several months before I retired to figure all that out. And of course that led me to staging. So, now 12 years later, again, I'm at the point where that growth part was really stifling me. I just really couldn't figure out which direction I needed to go. There was so much in my head, and there was so much going on. I had so much business that I was just not able to break it down and separate it out. So I really felt like I needed a coach to help me get focused and help me get direction of what were my biggest pains, and who were the kinds of people I need to hire in order to alleviate some of that, to free me up to do the things I need to be doing as a business owner. And I went through a year-long process last year with a small owned women business organization in the United States that I was selected for, to learn how to be a better CEO of your company and learn how to run your company, and not to work at it versus working in it every day, and to really step back. And I think as women, we have a hard time with that sometimes, because we're so hands-on and we're so emotional, and we're just in it all the time, and we love it, and it's our passion. So I've just kind of learned through coaching how to do that, and that brought me on. Then who do I need to hire? What do I need to do? What systems do I need to put in place in order to make those things happen? In order to let me go out and do my marketing plan and do the things I love to do presentations and public speaking and those types of things. So I knew I had to pull myself out of the trenches, even though I love being in the trenches and I love staging. And that was just a big learning curve for me, and just had to trust people and really delegate a lot of those things, and then find someone. Like I said, I hired her title is operations coordinator full-time to run a lot of the stuff for me. So I found, I found my coaches, I found Angela and Marianne. Basically, actually, I saw the telesummit, and I listened to what they all had to say, and I was just hooked. And I just said, I just have to hire these people. I'm just a do-it person. If I say I'm going to do it, I just do it. And I just knew I had to hire her, and it was great. So I think no matter what stage you're in, I think, we all need direction. We all need help. I'm a real believer in that. It's kind of like counseling. I mean, sometimes you just can't do it by yourself. And I think when you really just let someone else help you and give you that direction, and maybe you just need a little bit, or you need some guidance, that it really makes all the difference. Just opens up your eyes to so many different things. And that's really what happened to me with, going through Angela's marketing coaching and the other coaching that I've had. So it's been great. My business is going to, this year and next year, I think it's going to be phenomenal.
I think that one of the things that when you came through, and I have to say that when you came through Marion, and I was on her telesummit, and I remember thinking, well, what would be the benefit of working with both of us? And I actually had to go to you for the guidance of what did you need, what did you want, what were your expectations of a coach. So that would be not even just a life coach or a focus coach or the challenges that you were going through right now, to make sure that I was a good fit with you too, right? And how could Marion and I work together to make sure that your goals were covered completely. And you did a great job on that. And I remember thinking, wow, she's like, I wanted to work with you because I knew that when I did give you a plan, you were going to execute it, because here you've had 12 years of execution and making things happen. And so you were definitely my ideal client. So even when you're bringing on a new client, just like you were bringing on an employee, you look at, what their backgrounds are, what their needs are. Are you a good fit? Because then you're going to have a good relationship. And with Marion, I hadn't worked with her before. I will gladly do it again, in the fact that Marion helps people get focused and kind of an accountability, like they're touching base over and over again to make until they get their decisions made, because it's kind of like a decision making process. And she taps into things you might not even know you're challenged with, whether it be mindset. I know you've been just talking to her a few times. I think that I have it pretty much together. And then there's been some mind blocks that I have that she has recognized, and I've recognized by talking with her. And so I think that it's a really good fit. Whereas I work more on, once you've made the decisions, yes, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to attract more clients, and now you need to know how to do that. And so then you come with me and I work on the plan and that kind of thing. And I still motivate you, and I can still keep you accountability on the marketing side. But, it's somebody asked in the group, how much would a marketing coach, should I be paying for a marketing coach, or a business coach is what she called it. And then the biggest question she should have been asking is, what type of business coach should I be getting, and how much would those cost, right? So she needed to define more what her needs were, and determine what kind of business coach would be the best business coach for her, and then put a value on that. If I can make a decision to expand my business and make an extra 100,000 this year, how much would that be worth a month for coaching? Could I, if I'm going to make an extra 100,000, could I put 5,000 aside for coaching, for growth, and make sure that I actually do that and I'm held accountable, and et cetera, et cetera. Or, maybe I only want to make 20,000 or 30,000, but I just need some guidance over a couple pieces. I just need some ideas. I need some brainstorming. I need some, so maybe you might go with a smaller coaching package that will just get you unstuck for that second, and so that's the questions. I hope that's been helpful. The person who had that question, I hope it's been helpful to answer that as well. I did reach out to them and kind of guide them through that part a little bit, but one coach over another, even working with two coaches at the same time, can really propel your business forward, because they bring different things to the table, just like two stagers can bring different things to the table. And if you find two that are willing to work together and they offer different things, you'll have a power team for sure. Right. Trez, is there anything else you'd like to add? Is there anything that we've covered a lot of information in 2 days, and a lot on the magazine, and a lot today. Is there any questions in any of the groups, guys? Tori, is there anything on Facebook that anybody had any questions? No?
Yes, there's one question was, Trez, when you're going through this expansion mode, many times I see in our threads time and time again that stagers are going into debt. They're either putting everything on their credit card or they're taking out a loan. Have you ever done that? I mean, how do you finance those expansion times? Do you save up for it and just pay for it all? I mean, how do you do that?
Well, when I first started, I I actually, to be honest with you, I flipped a house to make some money. So I consciously did that. I didn't have any money to start the business. And, it was interesting with my training of becoming a stager. I remember being told you didn't really need any money to be a stager. You just needed a few tools and you'd make a whole lot of money, but you really didn't need anything. And that just really didn't make sense to me from a business perspective. So basically that was my story. That's how I did it. Me and my sister did that. And so I had about $10,000 to start. Since then, yes, I use my credit cards. I've never taken out a loan. I've put things on credit cards and I pay them back. I guess I've been fortunate that the business has always come. I've been really fortunate. It just continues to grow. It's word of mouth. It's being expert in the field in this area, I feel, and just having the confidence of the realtors so the business has always come. So I've always been able to expand I don't know. I don't know how it works. Sometimes it works. I mean, sometimes it's a leap of faith, and I think we do that. Sometimes it's jumping in the middle of a pond, it's like getting a warehouse and getting a truck. It was just, I knew I had to make this work. I knew I had to go to that level. I knew I could make it work. I think it's a mindset a lot of times, and how we set our mind up and our confidence level. And I just knew it was going to work, and I knew I could do it. So that's not probably a very scientific or answer for the books, but I think having that mindset and having that growth mindset, knowing it could happen and just making it happen.
Well, that's good. I love that, because actually every time I hear people's different stories and their different answers to questions like that, I think that really probably touches the heart and mind of someone who's listening, because we all come from such, different backgrounds and financial situations. I've had some stagers who they had $20,000 sitting in the bank and they decided to start the company. And then, a year in, they're 40,000 in the hole. And then I've had others who literally have no money. They go out and start working, and a year later they have 100,000 in the bank, right? So you just never know. So I love to hear that. Right. There's also a question that Orlando had earlier as we were talking about the 1099 employees and things. And we were talking about the confidentiality and those types of things. He was asking how much info do you disclose to your contractor, as far as client information, cost of project. Do you share that with your team, given the fact that they are contract players, or do you kind of keep that proprietary?
I don't really necessarily share a whole lot, because I don't really feel like it's important. I mean, I don't want to say it's none of their business. I don't mean it that way. That sounds so harsh. But I've shared to the point where if they're going to go out or they get questioned, I like them to know at least what a staging in general costs. They're not going to price it out. I do the bids. But if they get asked, or if they're on a consult, or they're somewhere and they're talking to realtors, I think they need to know what an average vacant staging costs for, a 15 or 1,800 square foot house. I mean, pricing to me is not that, it's not that secret. I don't know. People have a hard time with that. They have to keep their prices private, and I don't know. I really don't. I mean, I would have no problem telling anybody what my prices were, or again, I think Angela said, it's like, you have no idea. They might think, oh, you're charging $2,000 for that job. And it's like, wow, you're making so much money, Therese. It's like, okay, let's run the numbers.
Yeah.
The truck up and the warehouse and the electric and my insurance and my workman's comp and, all those factors that go into it. I mean, I take a paycheck, I'm on payroll, so, I mean, I make sure I think it's important that people get paid too. I think it's important that, if I can say that, to pay yourself. I mean, I couldn't do that in the beginning, and most people can't when they start their business, but at some point you have to do that, because why are you doing this? You've got to want to make money, and you have to do that. So yeah, when you get down and run all those numbers, I mean, I have to say that my business has always been profitable since I started. I mean, obviously my profit margin is much higher now than it was then, but people, they have false hopes and they think, oh, you're charging $2,000 for that job. Why are you making so much money? And I'm making, like Angela said, $17 an hour, or $18 an hour, whatever it is. I must be making so much money. But that doesn't bother me, because they have no clue what goes into all that. They really don't. And I'm not, I just don't feel compelled to sit down and break it all down for them and explain it to them. If they have a problem with it, then I guess they'll just go find another job somewhere else. So I know it sounds kind of harsh, sorry, but I don't know.
Well, I just want to say, Angela knows, I think Tori's heard this too. I'm on this kick. It's like each year, it's like I have my word of the year or my goal of the year. And this year, it's all about confidence. And so what I love about your answers, Trez, is that your answers are based on confidence. As you're talking, you're confident in what you bring to the table. You're confident in the product that you make. You're confident in what it is you do and how you do it. So you're not living in fear. You're not running your business based on fear. And for that, I hope that's a big message that the stagers who are listening to this this evening, that they'll take that away, because there's that fear I see so many times as I read the threads, you know, fear that they're not going to be selected for the job, or fear that someone's going to take their idea, or fear that the realtor is going to do this. And I love the fact that you're just stepping out there with confidence, and you continue to work on your competence, so that when you go out there, it's like, come on, it's okay if you're new, you come into the business too, because I know you can't do what I can do. And I love that. I think that's so good. Thank you. Thank you for sharing that tonight.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Oh, go ahead, Tori.
Yeah,
There's no real cues in Facebook right now, but if you're watching the replay and you have a question, make sure that you post that in the comment section. We do have 2 comments though. Patty Mamone said, "Thank you for sharing this, ladies. Very valuable content." And Rachel Maiority, of course, says, "None here, but great talk as always." So thank you guys for joining us, whoever's on live right now.
That's awesome. That's awesome. I think that this has been valuable information, and I hope I'm going to put this on the OTB Spotlight.tv for sure, because I feel that it needs to, you know, these are questions that come up again and again and again. And let's, you know, every time a question like this comes up about, you know, how do I hire staff, or you know, what is it, you know, when should I expand, and what's, you know, anything to do with that, I think we should share this video just to get them some baselines and some information going there. I'm hoping to have a couple other people that'll come and talk about inventory and warehouses and stuff like that to go into some of those questions as well. So watch for those in the next few weeks. Really, thank you so much. And Tori and Bobby, couldn't do this without you guys. Your valuable input is so helpful. You guys bring a perspective that I don't have. You know, I might have that marketing perspective, but your staging perspective in both areas, you know, you both have brought, you know, had successful staging businesses. You've converted to different areas, you know, Bobby going from vacants to and occupied to just occupieds, and then just to consults and having a very successful business doing that. Tori to going from, you know, having a successful New York business going and going into content and video and education, and just really falling back in love with that. I mean, you guys bring something different to the table, and I really do appreciate you helping. And even with the, you know, bringing out the most information from Trez, you guys help bring that out. So I really do appreciate you guys coming on board. Thank you so much. I hope you guys enjoyed tonight. Where, you know, make sure if you have enjoyed the video that you let us know. If you have questions, again, just send them to us via email or even post it on the thread.